So the title of this session is Applications for Water and Environmental Open Data. And I think over the last couple of days we've heard a lot of talk about data and big data, and Herb and I were just talking about data analytics and how is that going to affect people's moods and and directions. And a lot of people have been talking about it's not just the data that people are looking for. Researchers are looking for data, people developing apps, but the average citizen is really looking for that data to be presented in a way. And so we've got some apps, some versions of that, and some people who are going to talk about how to present that information. I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves when they get up, but first off is Bob Phillips and Mike Scarth, and then Christine Robson, and then Herb Lainchbury. They're going to present kind of back to back their pieces. I'm going to be kind of relentless but polite in terms of time, and I'll give you a warning, and I'll give you a halfway warning as you asked. And then at the end we'll have a time for questions, so we'll hold our questions to the end, and we'll get underway with Bob and Mike. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me back there? Yes. My name is Bob Phillips, and I work with an organization called Cybera, which is one of the 11 WPACs in Alberta. So we are Watershed Planning and Advisory Council. What that really means is we provide advice and we put together watershed management plans for our area. I'm not going to take a long time telling you what we do, but I am going to tell you when I started with Cybera, I met a whole bunch of people, and I realized very quickly, because I came from the Chicago School of Consulting, I was doing something different every week, and I didn't want to have to write everything we've been doing every month or every year. So I thought, why don't we put it on the web? Instead of producing a copybook or a whole bunch of volumes of research, let's get everything on the web up front. So part of what we're doing, coincidentally, last week we did some digital storytelling. So I'm just going to tell you one story. Before Alberta and Saskatchewan were provinces, my family came to the Northwest Territories. We came west to survey the townships in 1903. We came west to settle and break Prairie Wall near the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th meridians. Luciban, Appy, Chelan, and Emerson. We came to find a new future. We were builders of grain elevators and the Bluebird Cafe at Regina Beach. We named towns, and we were educators, engineers, editors, and entrepreneurs. We learned about the land around us, and we wrote about it. We traveled broadly and worked far from the purge, but most of us returned to this land. I love this land and can trace my family across the landscape. Dad and Mom took us for weekend country drives, and I remember hiking up the valley, carefully stepping around the cactus, admiring the crocus and prairie lilies, and sitting down around the table with Grandpa, his 3 sons, and their families. We still do. Grandpa and his sons are no longer with us, but the memories of them are. And the cottages they built are where the family meets every summer. We pick the Saskatoon berries, go for a sail or canoe, lie on the beach, and walk the old railway lines Broad Pond. The water from the mountains in Alberta flows by my home in Medicine Hat, and some of it is now diverted to the Pearl Valley and Last Mountain Lake. And now I enjoy a small piece of property surrounded by protected conservancy land and community pasture in the valley. And I walked the same native grassland valley trails that the homesteaders took. I visit the First Nations rock turtles, the buffalo rubbing walk, and I still watch and wonder as the coyotes and deer move throughout the land, and marvel at the thousands of birds that migrate overhead, especially the pelicans. I named this piece of paradise Cramsly, after grandfather Peter Bell's Scottish farm, and when we built a deck and a small ship, we called it Britain Maybe's Watershed, after my other grandparents. Grandparents who loved the land and somehow passed on that love to their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. It looks a little better when it's on your computer screen. I'd like to introduce Mike Scarth, because when we started talking about what we were going to do, we knew, first of all, we didn't have the technical skills to develop the software. And we also knew that we needed somebody to help us host it. So he volunteered to do part of that, and we hired him as a consultant. So Mike, come on up and show us what we've done.
Thanks, Bob. Appreciate that.
We're going to switch over here.
We are actually. Take that up. Well, it's a pleasure to take just a couple of minutes today and talk to you about the story, about what we're trying to do to try and help the watershed groups across Alberta and hopefully beyond Alberta with a challenge in terms of kind of telling their story, to taking data and information about not just the water that's within the watersheds, but about the communities and the biodiversity and about all that the watershed involves, and putting together some tools that actually help share that story with people, not just within Bob's community, but throughout the entire province and country as well too. And what we wanted to try and do to begin this journey of sharing the story of what's happening in the Seaway Basin is to begin to collect some of the readily available data and information on the health of the watershed. This is information around the water quantity and the water quality that's happening throughout the basin, and begin to put together a web-based state of the watershed tool, a place that people could go to and get access to as much readily available and currently available data and information on the watershed. So we spent a lot of time thinking about how we design the website and how we'd structure the data and information, and we don't have enough time to walk you through all of it today, but one of the main pieces of the work that we did for CEWA was to put together an interactive and graphical mapping application that allows people to go on and to actually begin to understand at least some of the components of the health of the watershed. So what you see here is actually an overview of some of the sub-watersheds across the Seaway Basin. And what we've been able to develop for Seaway is an application that overlays across each of the sub-basin various indicators on the health of this. Indicators on water quantity and water quality. So today we're going to show you just a couple of them, and we're going to focus on just one of the sub-watersheds. So we're going to take the watershed, the sub-watershed that's within the west section of this, and what you'll notice is that currently there's a variety of icons that show up. We've gone through and we've worked with CEWA to collect the most recent data and information on a variety of indicators around dissolved oxygen and nitrogen and phosphorus. And we've actually set up water quality thresholds for each of these various subbasins. So in each of these subbasins, we've gone through and said, what are the thresholds that will help us understand whether or not that indicator, let's use phosphorus as an example, whether or not phosphorus is actually in a condition where it can be described as being in a green, yellow, and red state. So green is essentially a state that says those indicators, the measurements for phosphorus in that subbasin, are within acceptable threshold levels. Or if they're not there and they're slightly elevated than that, then we get into a yellow condition or a red condition. And then a green condition, and then a blue condition is actually helping us to understand that that threshold is in a natural state. So what each of the users can do is to go through each of the subwatersheds, one by one, and actually understand the health of it. So let's take a look at what happens when the user actually clicks on. In fact, let's just hide that window, give us a little more space. First thing we do, and I'm going to flip us back here first of all. So you click on an icon for nitrogen, and the first thing we do is help people understand why nitrogen is even important. What's the role of nitrogen in terms of contributing to the health of the watershed itself? And we give people a little bit of background and a little bit of insight on why we picked that indicator and how the thresholds for those indicators were actually established. And then secondly, what we do is we actually provide people with access to the most current information around phosphorus at that location, or for nitrogen in this example. So we have set the indicator for phosphorus at this location. The recorded value for total nitrogen is based upon milligrams per liter. Right? The water quality objective that we set for nitrogen at this location was 1 milligram per liter. The last recorded year of measurement, right, was recorded at this. And then what we do is we actually give people an opportunity to actually go in and really understand what the trending has been for each of those water quality indicators. We allow people to go in and actually zoom in. There's a sliding scale. You can zoom in to one particular year. And the flexibility of what we've been able to build for a CY and a platform like this is we now have the tool and we now have the platform that every year as more and more data and information gets collected, it can easily get loaded up into this platform. It can easily get shared with people throughout the watershed. And every single year as we begin to gather more information, we'll be adding more and more icons, more and more information, more and more insights on what's happening throughout the watershed itself. We built the website so that there's not only the tool itself, but we give people access to really an opportunity to understand how the reporting itself is done across the watershed. There's a section here that helps people understand who CIWA is. You can learn about the membership, all the publications. You can learn a little more about the entire basin across the CIWA, a region. You can learn more about water allocations and use, and the plants, and the fish, and the wildlife throughout CIWA. And then we've developed profiles in each of those 6 sub-watersheds that I actually showed you to. So you can jump into this section and actually learn a little more about what's unique in each of the sub-watersheds across the CIWA basin. And just as important is really a section on feedback, because this is really important to us. We've got a brand new tool, we're sharing it with the community, and we want to make sure that what we're developing is built and for what the community would like to see and share across the website and across the community. So there are a couple of quick ways that people can send us their feedback. There's a voting tool here, and then people can actually just click here, and then there's an opportunity for people to actually just send us a little more feedback that way as well too. We've got a variety of other videos, stories and photographs. We're beginning to collect all of these insights across the watershed itself, and I think really develop a robust and easy to use platform that not only the users can go on and contribute to, but that the people within CWA can actually jump onto the website as well and begin to add some of their insights into it as well too. How are we doing for time?
Yeah, a couple more minutes.
Fabulous, fabulous. Part of what, I think part of what the vision that Bob and the CWA folks had was, he talked a little bit about this. The practice across the watershed community in terms of building what they call state of the watershed reports, because all of these watershed groups are required to build a state of the watershed report. The practice has always been to bring the research together, to spend a lot of time producing a physical report, an actual paper-based copy of a report that was shared within the community. And the challenge that they had is these reports take a lot of time and a lot of effort to produce. They can take a year, they can take 2 years, sometimes more than that to actually bring together. And by the time these reports were actually getting out the back door of the printers, they were already obsolete in terms of some of the trends and insights and impacts that were happening across these watersheds. And Bob wanted to develop a more interactive, a more real-time tool that allowed them to actually communicate back to the community about some of the things that were really happening across the watershed on a real-time basis, a more cost-effective, a more intuitive, and a more interactive approach to sharing information. Isn't that right?
Yeah, and we're not going to show you today, but tell us how easy it is to add an indicator and make modifications. Because I think that's probably the most important thing.
Thank you so much. Part of what we're really all about here is developing solutions that are not only easy for the user to use, but are easy for the client to use as well too. And so what we've done in terms of building the platform is actually ensure that we put together a web-based tool set that actually allows Bob himself, people within the volunteer group, to jump onto the website and start making those updates themselves. This isn't a platform or a tool where people have to actually send changes to a software developer in order to get them done. The icons themselves are actually a very easy process in terms of adding into the back end. We can add an icon onto the back end in probably less than 3 or 4 minutes. We can change and update the information for each of these icons in probably about a minute or 2 as the information becomes available. And ultimately, where we want to begin to move some of the reporting structure to is towards real-time reporting. To actually have some icons on the site where you can go to and start to begin to capture real-time information on the river system itself. Information like river flow and river level. And those are tools that we're working with Bob, and I'm optimistic that we'll begin to have some of those tools available, certainly within the next couple of, if not in the next couple of weeks, within the next couple of months.
That's great. Well, thank you very much. We're
Thanks,
going to
guys.
switch over now to...
I'm gonna stand over here because I don't exactly have the height for this podium. I'm here from IBM. I live down in Silicon Valley, but I actually grew up here, so I'm really excited the opportunity to come back into the mountains. And I'm here to tell you about a project we did at IBM called CreekWatch. And if you have an iPhone, you're welcome to follow along. It's free on the App Store, Creek Space Watch. You can search for it if you can get the network to work. It's been making me crazy all day. So this is the project in a nutshell. In fact, I can probably just show you the slide and end my talk right here, because it's really very simple what we're doing. It's an iPhone app. It's a project that we did in collaboration with some of the water authorities in California, and has gone worldwide since then. And it's very simple. It's just an app designed to help anybody with an iPhone walk up to the stream and do something to help the watershed. So we wanted to increase awareness, we wanted to increase education, and we wanted to get some data that would be useful for some of the authorities who are trying to track some of the problems going on in the watershed. This is a couple of screenshots from it. Like I said, you're welcome to follow along. And let me tell you a little bit about how we built it. The first thing we did was we had this brainstorming session with the California EPA. We got this big Smarter Planet campaign going on at IBM, and it has a lot of aspects for the salespeople that I don't care too much about, but from a research standpoint, it means that we are throwing buckets of money at problems in the real world that nobody else has any interest in solving. And so we had this great brainstorming session with the California EPA where we had them come into the lab and we said, look, we built all these cool things. We've got this pool of crazy researchers who love to spend their time building cool things. What is the biggest problem that you have in the state of California that we could help with? And they said, oh my God, water. Great. So we talked to the water authorities, and we ended up talking, I spent so much time talking to ecologists, I had no idea about any of this stuff. You know, I'm a computer geek, right? I mean, I like nature, I grew up here, but I didn't know anything about the watershed. So we spent a lot of time talking to all the watershed groups in the area about, like, what kind of information do you want? What are you looking for? You know, what are you frustrated about? A lot of them are very frustrated about getting good chemistry data. Turns out that's a real problem. But unfortunately, not a problem that anybody with an iPhone can solve. And what we wanted to do was find something that we could reach the most people as possible. So we went through this very iterative process. We met with a bunch of community groups. We tried doing a bunch of chemistry tests, meeting with school groups that do this stuff, meeting with other groups. This is from one of our school trips, learning about pH and how high and low pH kills fish. He had fun, so did I. And then eventually we settled down on what our key design goals were. And this is what we decided we were really going to aim for. We wanted something as simple as possible, zero training. I want to just be able to pick it up, download it, and immediately start using it. And given that, what data can we actually trust from someone who's just downloaded and randomly used the app? Well, I'm willing to believe you whether there is water there or not, maybe whether it's moving or not, and certainly whether there's trash. Average Joe user can definitely tell these things. We even did a quick user study that proved that, but you got to do these things when you work in research, prove that people can tell if there's trash or not. So we decided that we would do just these 3 elements. And then we worked with the California board, and I know this sounds very simple, but actually, in California in particular, the question of whether the streams have run dry or not is a really big question, because our streams, they run dry every year. And it's really unclear, because it's all these tiny little tributaries, whether we're about to run out of water, because most of the water is contained in all of these tiny little tributaries that run dry at some point during the summer. And if they run dry in May, then we have a serious problem, and if they run dry in September, well, we can handle that. So knowing when the streams run dry is a huge thing, and knowing if they're blocked anywhere, if the flow has stopped, if part of the stream has dried up and we're still looking at just a pool of water in the upper parts of the stream, that's a really big deal too. So those are, that's what we focused on. And the other sort of key aspect here, which I'm sure I'm going to be preaching to the converted about, is just if you get people to do something to help their watershed, they will be more aware of water issues. So just getting the awareness out there is a huge step. So this is the app. Like I said, very simple. You select your water level, your flow rate, and your trash. We actually have a little, if you go into the definitions, you can see some pictures of that, and we use the state volunteer definition for full and the state volunteer definition for flowing, which I didn't know that there were standards for, but apparently if the water is visibly moving, it's fast. Like if you can tell that it's moving, it's fast. And if all you can tell is that a leaf has very slowly moved, that's slow. I didn't know that. Anyway, you can learn all about it on the app. Anyway, so we launched this app and it was great. We wanted to put the data up so that everybody could use it. And this is the data. And if you don't have an iPhone but you merely have a web browser, you can still play along. This is the website, creekwatch.org. And all of the data from all of our users to date is up on the website. You can go and you can browse through it. And that was something that we really wanted. We wanted everything to be open, everything to be out there. Every piece of data that's collected goes automatically up on this website. You can go through and look at the photos and sort it by region and try and figure out what's going on in your area. And a lot of the ecologists that we've worked with say that this is their favorite feature because they know if they're going somewhere that they can just zoom in on the map to that region and see if anybody has been there recently and taken a photo. They get an idea about what they're getting in for before they actually drive the truck up to the site. And this is where you can download the data and sort it by various features, but basically the goal here is just not everybody wants a nice map interface. Sometimes you just want to download the data. A lot of the scientists that we work with do most of their work in Excel. So being able to download this in an Excel compatible format was a really big deal for them. But even though they asked that at the beginning, man, they really liked having the map to play with. People like maps, pictures, it's fun. Anyway, so we've actually been online. This is coming up on a year at the end of this month, and we've got 4,000 users. We'll have more when I launch the Android app, which to stall all of your questions later, yes, I am working on, as soon as I get time, not giving talks. One of the neatest things that we've seen is this use in trash cleanup. We expected that we would just be tracking where the pollution was coming from using trash. But several of the cities, after we launched CreekWatch, they were like, oh, this is great. We don't know where to do our city cleanup. Now we know where to do our city cleanup, because there's all of these photographs of really bad trash sites in urban areas. And a lot of the community cleanup services have started using the data to find trash hotspots. And particularly in San Jose, which is where my lab is located, they're just loving this feature because it saves them man hours trying to figure out where they need to go and do. It's like a built-in survey in every iPhone. This is really cool. Do you guys remember earlier this year Brazil flooded, like really badly? This is that flood. I had some user in Brazil who just submitted the photos of the flooding, and I love to put this photo up, even though it's sort of totally irrelevant to any talk, just because I think it's great to see people from around the world using this stuff. And if you look, this first photo is from the beginning of the flooding, and this bridge, 2 days later, is totally washed out. Like the city's been filled with water, it is totally washed out. And we get random images like this from around the world, and I love that CreekWatch is anonymous, and so anybody can use it, and there's no barriers, and there's no concerns about privacy, but at the same time, I would really love to be able to reach out to this guy and be like, dude, were you okay? Like, this is your town. And so we've had a lot of people reach out to us and wanting to do sort of more real-time stuff along these lines where it's like, it's great, we have this reporting and it goes to this website, but can we do something a little more proactive in real time where you report like dumping? And then, we show up there with the cops and, we arrest that person with that drum full of oil, pouring it straight into the water. And that's not something that we're doing right now, but I think it has a lot of potential. And I think that arming an entire community with the ability to report on a problem the instant they see it has a lot of power. Whenever you launch something like this, you expect something to go wrong. This I did not expect to go wrong. How CreekWatch works, and I'm going to tell you this now and hope that you do not abuse this knowledge later, is that every morning or so when I get up, I press a button on my computer and it shows me all the photos that have been submitted to CreekWatch in the last little while. And I check them to make sure that they are not objectionable, as we say on the internet. We haven't had any problems with that, but what we have had is an extraordinary number of people that photograph not a creek. And I worked out that there's got to be at least 2 main groups of people going on here, because really about half of my photos are like this. Somebody has clearly just downloaded I don't know, they read about it on the news, they saw it on Facebook, they download the app, they want to try it out, and they just photograph their desktop. I get a lot of desktops. People are messy. But the one that really baffled me is the number of photographs I got of water not in a creek. Pitcher of water, glass of water, disproportionate number of toilet bowls from China. And you gotta wonder, right? Like, does creek just translate strangely into Chinese and somehow toilet bowl is the thing that they think they should be photographing? We had a lot of theories about this, and so a little earlier this year we launched a new version of CreekWatch. We launched a multilingual version. Turns out translating CreekWatch into Chinese solved the toilet problem. And another new feature, which if you're downloading CreekWatch right now, will let you try out the app, and then we'll ask you, this is your first data point. Did you really mean it? Really? Or were you just playing around? And since then, I get a lot less desktops and no toilets. But like I said, please do not abuse this knowledge. Go home and start photographing toilets. I don't need any more of that in my inbox in the morning. Anyway, so this is just another lesson on crowdsourcing, and there's incredible lot of potential to use this type of technology and pitfalls that you wouldn't have really expected. But I have one point that I want to make very strongly, which is about promotion. We, being IBM, the giant corporation. If we do something this good for the public good, then we talk about it a lot. And so when I launched, I spent an incredible amount of time talking to reporters who were very excited to know that we were going to do mobile crowdsourcing to save the planet. And that was great, and that was a lot of fun for CreekWatch. And we did get a lot of users that, they heard about it through the news sites and they came on board. But I want to show you one thing that was far more important. Facebook. We put this Facebook page up before we launched the app. It was the marketing guy's idea. I was like, really? Okay, sure. I mean, I use Facebook. I would like it. So we put this thing up. And before we even launched, we had 30,000 friends on Facebook. Now we have 250,000 friends on Facebook. I wish I had 250,000 users. I guess not all of them have iPhones or have bothered to download the app. Like I said, open for those Android users. But it's really amazing to me how much this viral social networking thing has really spread awareness. And it's great because if we look at the goal of the app as also being education, keeping everybody aware of watershed issues, then this is even better news than my 4,000 users. Because I've got 250,000 people around the world who think that this problem is important enough that they at least clicked a button on Facebook. They thought about it for a moment, about the fact that their watershed is in jeopardy. And that to me is really fantastic. It makes me feel good inside. I hope it makes you feel good inside. So anyway, that's what I wanted to show you about CreekWatch. I would normally pause here for lots of questions, but I think we're gonna keep those for the end, which is fine. So hold on to them. I hope you all run home and download my app. Yeah. Oh, and if you have questions that you don't have a chance for later, you can always email me. Or if you don't write this down in time, anything on the CreekWatch website, it just goes to me. So click the email button.
That's great. Thanks, Christine.
My name is Herb Lainchbury. I'm from Victoria, BC, and I'm an open data advocate and enthusiast, I like to say, in British Columbia. And about 2 years ago, I got really interested in, I could see that some things were sort of starting to happen in the open government space. And I thought to myself, if this open government thing was going to, and the open data thing, which is what I'm really interested in, was going to take off, then we would need to get some citizen engagement happening. And so I kind of looked around, nobody was really doing anything about it, so I took it upon myself to make a website. I registered a domain name called OpenDataBC and got a Twitter ID called OpenDataBC, and I put up 20 links, and then I told all my friends about it. And that's basically how it started. And then, so I kind of just started with a catalog of there was no open data at the time, so I just looked around at a bunch of local government sites. I wrote a little crawler that went around looking for data, and I found some on the BC site. And so I would just, whenever I had some time, I would just put some more links up. Eventually, it was really static. It was, it was quite simple to begin with. But eventually, I, made it dynamic, and we now have, 2 years later, we have a bit of a community forming. So that's kind of what I want to talk to you about first. So the website now has, there's a bunch of strategies we've kind of worked out to try and to get people more engaged with open data and government. One of the things is a catalog. So this data catalog doesn't actually contain any data, but just points at data that is available on the web. And it's all about BC data, but we look at all jurisdictions of government, so federal, provincial, and local government. We also look at academia and community data. So any kind of open data we can find anywhere, we just try to point to it. And we have a few other things that we do, like, so you notice that this is just I kind of modeled this after the UK data portal. So we have basically a search capability. There's about 230 data sets in there right now. We kind of don't take any data, like oftentimes people publish things like, I don't know, PDFs and that sort of thing, and they call that data. We're looking more for the kind of data that we can use. We can write a program to use and write an application with, or do some visualization with. So basically we have around 230 reasonably high quality data sets in there. And I can just do a search, for example. Oops. Suppose I'm interested in business licenses. So I can do a search like that, and I can see that I've come up with 4 hits in 4 different jurisdictions, something to do with business licenses. So, it's a simple tool, but it'll kind of, a couple of things it does is first, often if I'm a citizen, I don't actually know what level of government that I need to talk to get a certain piece of data. So one of the thoughts behind this is make the data in BC kind of available, searchable in kind of a search engine way that goes across jurisdictions, because I don't know really where I'm supposed to be looking, number one. And number two, having the communities that are producing data, the data producers, available on one site kind of creates a bit of a competition. And it kind of, it gives us an opportunity to, in one place, kind of flag the ones we think they're doing a great job and promote that. So there's kind of 2 main motives for that. We recently added a publishers feature, which is where we're just listing any of the publishers that we have, where we have some open data. And we're going to use this in a variety of different ways. First of all, our crawler is going to use this to kind of keep track of things. We're also going to use this in a new feature that we're going to bring out pretty soon, which is a request feature. So you can request, people can request open data from one of these publishers. And so that's a request we get quite often, where publisher says, what do you want us to release? So we're going to try and facilitate that process a bit. And then the other thing we do is we have hackathons. And so in the last 2 years, we've had about 15 hackathons. And if you don't know what a hackathon is, it's basically a bunch of people get together in a room for a period of time, usually a day or more. And we have a bit of a brainstorming session in the morning where I invite people to forget what they know about open data, forget what they know about government, and just imagine if you could get any data you wanted and create an app, what would you, or a visualization, what would you create? And so forget about the constraints that you have, because often those things kind of hold us back from our imagination. So we have this sort of imagining session first thing in the morning. We do that for about an hour. And we come up with some great ideas. So in that process, we've probably come up with at least 60 great ideas for applications and visualizations. After we have the imagining session, then we actually have a bit of we take a break, and then we have a bit of a voting session where we say people can stand up and speak about the project that they have imagined that morning. And then we invite people, so we kind of go around to the room and people do that. And then we have a vote with your feet session. So basically what happens is, if you hear one of the projects you really like, then you just walk over to that person and you start working on that project. We do that and people get to work right away, work till about noon, have a break, and then all afternoon we work on our projects. And then by 4 o'clock we have what's called a show and tell. And thanks, perfect, thanks. And so we do the show and tell, and people get a chance to show off the projects that they created in that day. And so it's amazing what people can create in one day, and I just want to show you a couple of them. One of them is water related, which is My Catch. And what My Catch is, basically this guy, friend of mine in Victoria, his name is Kevin, he is a fisher, he likes to go fishing, and he finds it so frustrating that the rules around fishing are very complicated in British Columbia. And so he said, I just want an app that basically I can whip out my phone wherever I am, and it just tells me about the regulations that are relevant where I am, because I don't actually care about the regulations in other places. So that's what this app is for. So each one of these spots is a place where the regulations are different. So you can click on, if you happen to be in this, it depends, like the regulations are different even in different parts of the same piece of water. Whoops. Body of water. So you can click on these little circles and they give you some more detail. So now this is a really simple app in essence. It's a Google Fusion table, but it gives you some of the idea of what people can put together in a really short period of time. Another one, this one isn't water related, but I want to show it to you. Van Shelter. This was created at our last hackathon. We have a place in British Columbia called Downtown East Side, which is a place that's a very sort of poverty-stricken area, and it's a lot of homeless people. And what happens is a lot of people spend a lot of time looking for a place to stay. And there's lots of places to get a bed there, but there's no way to find out. It's a manual process to find out where they can stay. So a couple of people at the hackathon created this application, which allows you to basically, these are all shelters in the Downtown East Side, and the big number is how many beds are available. It's not live right now, as you can see, but the big number is how many beds are available, and the small number is out of how many beds. And the super cool thing about this, I think, is each one of these boxes is a Twitter feed. So if you own one of, if you're the person running Covenant House, if you want to update your square, you just tweet 5 divided by 32. That means I've got 5 vacancies out of 32 beds. So it's a little micro format. And so these boxes are just, when they were demoing it, it was like unreal, just watching the numbers change. And the idea is these, we can set up really cheap displays, like really cheap computer, put it in a store window downtown in the Downtown East Side, where people can see it from the outside, and they instantly have real-time vacancy availability. So this is a cool idea that I think, that came out of a hackathon, done in one day again by 2 people. Now finally, I'm going to switch to my second topic, which is Waterly, which is an application. So about a year ago, the province of BC had a contest. It's called the Apps for Climate Action Contest. And this is really what got me started on the hackathon thing. So when they announced the contest, I thought, we really need to get some people together to work on these projects together so we can kind of get a bit of momentum going. So we had 3 hackathons before the contest deadline. And it wasn't until the third hackathon was done that I realized I hadn't actually worked on a project at all. So I thought I thought I could get away without doing one, but a lot of my friends were kind of like, nah, you gotta do one. So I ended up writing this app called Waterly. And what Waterly does is, it allows you to, it's pretty simple too, really, but you just put in your address, like my address. Let's see it. I'll just do Vancouver for starters. So you can put in an address, and what it does is it geocodes. This is my connection. Okay, well. Okay, just lost my connection.
We're all there with you.
Okay. Really? Okay, well, I'm going to tell you what it does. So you put your address in this little box, so I think we're back.
We're all probably trying to do it. And
That's right. My little server, my little cloud-based server is going crazy right now. So basically, you put your address in, it geocodes the address, and it drops a pin, and then it figures out what municipality or what watering district you're in. It's not always a municipality, and it draws a polygon around that. And then it also looks at the weather stations that are in the area, and it finds the closest weather station to the pin that you just dropped. And over on the right, it shows you how much it's rained. And now this particular weather station hasn't reported in the last 7 days. But I'll go to my address. And so there's I have quite a large watering district because it's not just a city, it's a bunch of municipalities together. And you can see that near my house, it's rained very little, 0.2 millimeters in the last 7 days. But that was updated 3 days ago. So I'll speak to why there's a bit of a lag in that. But anyway, so the idea is that's the information it gives you. So now the other thing you can do is you can have the site, you can click the Remind Me button, and what it will do is it will remind you on your watering day. It actually knows your watering schedule based on your address as well. and it'll send you an email in the morning telling you whether it thinks you should turn your sprinkler off or what. It sort of makes a recommendation. So the idea behind Waterly, was to partly change behavior in terms of having more information to do things with, but also it's just to raise awareness, like you mentioned, raising awareness around water. And I found for myself, I haven't talked to a ton of users around it, but I talked to a few because people come and talk to me about it, but just for myself, I found that when I get that email, I actually look forward to the email. You would think it would be like spam, but I actually look forward to the email because I've got a little data point that I get, and I am way more aware of the amount of rainfall, and I'm sure I use way less water now because my sprinkler stays off for weeks on end sometimes because I know that I don't need to water. So I want to tell you a little bit about how it works, and basically, it does know the schedule. So the schedules all come in different formats. They're usually just HTML pages on municipal sites. So I have to go in there and code that, and they're all in BC. They're quite complicated. So they're all different. So sometimes it's based on your street number or your house number, whether it's even or odd, and the day of the week. So for me, it's like I can water Sundays. 2 minutes. Okay, I can water Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays. 10 o'clock in the morning, or 6 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock in the morning, or 6 p.m. at night till 10 p.m. at night. It's just like, really? Like, who can remember all these things? And there's different schedules depending on the months. So Waterly knows all these schedules, and it just sends me the information at the appropriate time. Are we done?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's great.
Okay, great. Thanks.
So we've got some time for questions, and if you just want to sit down,
Sure.
kind of be casual as opposed to standing up here.
Yeah, well, Christine, could you show how you upload the photos on your app on the screen? I didn't actually see that when you showed us the picture.
Oh, sure. It's very simple. You hit the share button, and the photo becomes on my server.
Oh, it does? Okay.
Yeah.
So if they want to send multiple photos, they can just...
It's one photo per data point. So
okay.
Every data point gets one photo. If you would like to submit multiple photos, just submit multiple data points. No
But
problem.
if they go back a second day, they can put another
Yes,
picture.
exactly.
Okay,
And lots
so
of people do that. They take like a photo every day of the same spot while they're walking their dog.
But a maximum of one per day?
No,
Oh.
there's no maximums. I got no limits on this. You can
Okay.
give me as much data as you would like.
One per data point.
1, 2, 3. So you just
Walk along the
down
beach.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of people do that.
Just don't fall in when you take a picture. Tracy.
So what do you do with that data? Because there was an initiative in Canada called Make Poverty History. And what happened with Make Poverty History is basically a bunch of kids wore hip t-shirts and danced on Parliament Hill and did not make poverty history. So they made Make Poverty History a campaign, and they had apps and they had everything, but it was just a hipster type of event, which I found rather distressing considering there's a lot of people who work actively on making poverty history for real.
Okay, well,
So
I
I have
definitely
a
don't
question-
put on any t-shirts and do
No,
dancing.
that's not the question. My question is, beyond feeling good that I put a picture up of a watershed, how do you mobilize the people who contribute the information? How do you use the data? And can that data actually invoke some
I'm sorry
kind of
if I didn't
change?
make that clear. The
Yeah.
water authorities in California really want this data to track water volume.
So they're using that.
They're
Okay.
using this data.
Excellent. Okay, that's what I want to know.
And we've actually, we launched, we didn't put any regional restrictions on. We actually had a lot of adoption from other places.
Okay.
And so, I have that worry too, right? Like, if I have one user in Alberta, is anybody going to use that data? And I don't think that anybody is using the data in Alberta. But a lot of other places where we've launched, people in the community have been like, oh, we heard about Creek Watch, and like there's this group in Korea that's using the data to track water pollution in Seoul. And they saw this app and they saw the opportunity, and now they're actively using the data. And we've had dozens of groups that have reached out to us after they've seen this app and been like, oh, can we use this for our systems? And we let it to be flexible. You can use it for anything you'd like. So a lot of groups are starting to adopt it.
Great.
So that's really nice. But I do, for the people who are like, the one user in Alberta, it's just, you feel good about the watershed, and maybe later the data will be useful if somebody actually starts to use it. There will be a longitudinal record, but it's not as great as in San Jose, where like they're checking the data all the time to look for trash hotspots.
Great.
Yeah.
Good. Good.
Good, other questions? Ashley?
Yeah, Christine, how does the work that you're doing with this app fit into some of the other work that IBM's doing? So projects like City Forward, does the data get pushed there?
I've had so many talks with the City Forward people. For those of you who don't know, City Forward is yet another IBM thing that's going to change the world and make it a better place. We seem to do a lot of that these days. It's great. Keep giving me projects like this, I'll be happy. But they're sort of more focused on like real-time stuff. They want to be able to react to stuff. And like I said, that's something that we've looked into and a lot of people have been interested in. But my system is, for those of you who speak technology, this is the lightest weight thing ever. The entire thing is a LAMP stack with 16 files on it and an app. Like that's the entire system. I built it in a summer with an intern while doing 3 other jobs. Like it's not heavyweight, right? So we're not designed to do like massive real-time updates to governments on like important things that are going on in the city. We could, it's the same basic concept, but it's not built for that. Other projects in IBM are built for that and are designed for that. This is very special purpose around water. And there are a lot of initiatives across IBM. I mean, IBM is bigger than many countries, so I can't even keep track of everything that we're doing. But we have a lot of things in smarter cities and smarter organization, trying to get citizens to have feedback into utilities and into the way that the cities are working, in addition to the many water-related projects that we're doing.
Good, thanks. Time for one more question. I'm trying to keep on Megan's timelines. One more question. Anyway.
I'll ask a follow-up. Well, it's interesting that you mentioned smarter cities. So I'm also from the city of Edmonton, and we were part of that initiative this year. And but I know that one of the other projects was around water sanitation in one of the cities in North America. I can't remember which one. So I guess I'm just wondering how all of these initiatives actually fit together. If they do, what I'm hearing is IBM's really big, and there's no clear direction on that, but...
Well, I would hesitate to say there's no clear direction on that. I would say more that, we want to do something really big, but everybody has different visions of how that's going. So, like, we knew in our lab that what we wanted to do was do something local that would have a real impact, and so we came at it from that angle. And we didn't want to step on anybody else's toes within the company. There's lots of other projects that are dealing with water in different ways. There's projects dealing with water resources in cities and how often you should shower for extra time in the morning versus not shower for extra time in the morning or whatever else. There's, reporting leaks and fire hydrants going and spilling water all over the street. There's lots of projects that are sort of designed around those areas. And we very deliberately stepped away from municipal water and sort of things the water districts deal with and wanted to deal with what the water boards deal with. So before the water gets filtered and processed and made into the drinking water that we feel like we care about more because it's what's coming out of the tap. But that water starts somewhere, and so that's the direction that we came at it from. And we're one of the only groups in IBM that's doing water from that angle.
That's great. Well, thank you all for coming, and thanks for the speakers. If people are around, there's a break next, so if you have more questions for people, catch them and do what I'm going to do. If you have a use for this kind of stuff, let people know, and check it out yourself. And maybe do that when people aren't presenting, because I think that was messing up the bandwidth. But interesting problems to have these days. Well, thank you, everybody, and thanks for speaking.